I'm not talking about money for Greenland yet. I might talk about that. But right now, we are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not, because if we don't do it, Russia or China will take over Greenland, and we're not going to have Russia or China as a neighbor. I would like to make a deal, the easy way, but if we don't do it the easy way, we're going to do it the hard way. And and by the way, I'm a fan of Denmark too. I have to tell you, and they've been very nice to me. I'm a big fan, but the fact that they had a boat land there 500 years ago doesn't mean that they own the land. I'm sure we had lots of boats go there also. But we need that because if you take a look outside of Greenland right now, there are Russian destroyers, there are Chinese destroyers and bigger, there are Russian submarines all over the place. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland, and that's what they're going to do if we don't. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland, either the nice way or the more difficult way.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to today's very important live stream. My name is Cyrus Jansen. I'm going to be joined by two amazing guests in a little bit. I've got Alex from Reporterfy Media. I've got Carl Za, two YouTubers that you guys love and know. And, the interesting thing as we start this year is 2026 has gotten off to a start that I don't think anybody of us in the geopolitical world would have ever imagined. We woke up on January 3rd with news of Donald Trump illegally invading Venezuela, capturing their leader, now threatening to seize the oil. What's most interesting is that he wants to personally sell this oil, put it into his own private bank accounts, or I should say offshore bank accounts that are controlled only by him, the president. And now we are seeing an unprecedented situation, I would say really in the United States and European history. And that, of course, is Donald Trump threatening to actually attack another NATO country, which is just absolutely incredible. It's wild. It's something that I don't think even the most pessimistic Trump analyst would have imagined him doing in his presidency. But yet here we are. It's 2026, and we're off to a very, very interesting start. So as we get started on today's live stream, I'm going to bring in our other panelists here. We've got Alex from Reporterfy Media. Alex, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Cyrus, for having me on this evening.
Absolutely. And the one and only Carl Za. How are you, Carl? All right, Carl, I think your mic is muted, my friend. Let me make sure you can unmute that mic on your end.
Here we go.
There we go. How are you, Carl? I still don't hear him. Okay, Alex, I'm going to go to you while Carl sorts out his thing. So, Alex, I want to get your kind of an opening statement from you. You and I have been on many podcasts together. We do a lot of shows together, and I kind of, we haven't had a chance to actually speak one-on-one. So I'd like to get your initial thoughts on the last, let's call it the last week. With Venezuela, Greenland, and everything. Let me know what your initial thoughts are.
Well, first of all, I mean, it is shocking even for Republicans to see this display going on in world diplomacy. For me, at one point in 2016, I actually felt that America was on the right track. They had got a business guy in there. He's not really attached too much to politics. Fast forward to 2026, and well, their dear leader, Donald Trump, is definitely into politics and definitely into invading and kidnapping leaders of countries on sovereign territory. Shocking. I've said to my wife about 5 times this weekend, what on earth is going on over there? And it's disturbing. And when you see that happen, it means that no one is safe anywhere in the world. And when this guy is saying, hey, this country's next, that country's next, I believe him now.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. Let's get in Carl's perspective here. Carl, how we get that microphone sorted out, buddy?
Can you hear me now?
There we go. He's back in the game. Okay. Carl, it's been a while since you and I have connected as well. I want to get your opening statements. What is your thoughts on these on this opening week of geopolitics here in 2026?
Well, Trump knows what's good for television, being a reality TV show host that he really is. He is a master of distraction, creating maximum chaos, and to direct attention. Because one thing he really don't want people to think about is all those red-acted Epstein files. And he done a heck of a job to shift people's attention from the Epstein files to, from anywhere from Venezuela to Greenland. The list goes on, and he can keep going. He can keep going because he's the president of the United States. He does have a lot of power to do so.
Right.
And I think it really shows he doesn't really give a shit about the so-called U.S. national interest. It does not make sense for him to go after Greenland because U.S. already have military bases on Greenland. Greenland is part of Denmark, which is part of NATO, but he doesn't give a shit about any of that. It's all about his own personal stuff, which is he doesn't want people to think about Epstein files. So here we are.
Yeah. Actually, I think both of you brought in two really good points, and I'm going to just elaborate on those a little bit. Alex, I go back to 2016 as well. I was living in Hong Kong at the time, and I remember that scene of Donald Trump going down the elevator is one of the famous scenes, where he really announced his presidency. And I have to admit, I was a very big Trump supporter in 2016, for the same reason you just said. Look, you have a great opportunity here. You are a celebrity TV show host, as Carl just pointed out. But the important thing is that you had the support of the people. And yes, you had an opportunity to do something different in American history because you were a guy that was not a politician and that actually could say, look, we're going to make the really good decisions that are going to benefit the people. We're going to improve our government for once. So it was really like a once in a lifetime shot. And if you actually look back at the clips from 2016, there's a lot of rational, good things that Trump said. That's interesting enough is the complete 180 of what he's doing right now. We are not in the business of nation building. We have all of these useless politicians start these wars. The military industrial complex is, corrupt. We can't be enriching these greedy people. And then literally we're doing the 180 right now. So Trump has made an extreme pivot from that 2016. And I think it's a very big wake up call. You had mentioned, Alex, as well, even just the Republicans. A lot of Republicans are struggling to understand what is Donald Trump doing. And I want to bring in a little bit of a perspective from America. I am in the United States right now. And, just kind of some of the things that I have heard, because you have an amazing thing happening in the United States where Donald Trump has an ability to really capture the attention and the focus of half of the country. And so half of the country, very scaringly, they don't have any ability to rationally think about things, and they just will listen to Donald Trump no matter what happens. And so, there's it's very common to hear this in America where people say, Donald Trump could literally go out on Fifth Avenue and, pull a gun and, make somebody go away. Can't say that K word online, but, he would be fine, right? Because he's just that popular and he has that much power, right? And so, this is the interesting thing where I've heard guys say like, well, if we look at Greenland, actually, if you look at the tectonic plates, it's geographically, it's actually in America. So that technically is ours. And I'm like, oh, interesting point, because Hawaii is actually on the tectonic plates, actually in the Pacific. So, are we going to start playing this game where now we're going off of tectonic plates? Like, when in your life have you ever referenced a tectonic plate? Until now, you're just like, technically Greenland's in America. You know what? It should be ours. I'm like, no, it's not ours. We can't just say that. And if you remember the intro that we played, it was just so crazy. And it's like, what do you mean? They landed a boat there 500 years ago and they think that they get to have that? And it's like, Donald, I think there's a whole group of Native Americans that would like to sit down and have a chat with you about that. So it's become a parody here in the United States because it's just incredible how deranged so many of the comments are. But then you realize, hold on a second. This is the most powerful man in the world, commanding the United States. And this is downright scary. And I think a lot of people, this MAGA crowd, they just have lost all ability to actually make rational analysis right now. And it's extremely scary.
I would. I don't think. I know there's like a cult of personality around Trump, but I'm not sure if that's half the country anymore. Because one of the reason Trump is creating all these crazy distraction is because he is facing real possibility of the MAGA movement is being fractured right now.
Right.
Because there's a question about Epstein files, that's a big thing, and then there's his connection to Israel. Trump is not even making any pretense he's not working for the Israeli interest. He recently just hosted the owner of Las Vegas Sand. What's her name? Sheldon
Adelson.
Adelson. Adelson. Yeah, and she. And the guy, he makes no pretense that he's working for the best interest of Israel. So I mean, there are people who originally got swept up by the Trump's popularity, and they thought Trump was really going to make a change by being not part of the establishment. But now they're disappointed because now they realize Trump is really not different from previous presidents. I mean, the fact that he came to power promising non-intervention. If we actually look at the promises of all the presidential candidates going all the way back to George W. Bush, all of them promised non-interventionist foreign policy. George W. Bush, who's after him? The Obama, Biden, Trump, they're all the same. They all came to power promising they're going to focus on America, and it ends up being the same thing again. And I think people are finally catching up that Trump is no different.
Oh yeah, and Carl, I think you are right on that. Is that there's a lot of Republicans that are switching, and I'll be honest. My mother's a very hardcore Republican, and she was very, very pro-Trump, even until like last year. And I think really the Gaza thing and how when Trump shared that AI digital image of a golden statue of himself in Gaza, that was the tipping point for my mom. She finally woke up and said, "Oh my gosh, like that is." And my mother's from Germany, right? So she literally was like, "This guy is going down the same path as Hitler, and he is just becoming obsessed with power. He wants to consolidate everything, and electing a golden statue." This goes against, biblical principles. This goes against just no sane, leaders going to do that. And that was the flipping point. There's just like, nope, no more. It's done. It's over. So that was a long time ago. But it's shocking. I mean, we'll get into the ICE, strategies. You have the ICE patrol, the officers that are arresting and murdering United States citizens in the country right now. I mean, this is an absolute tragedy. I mean, that's the biggest story right now going, domestically here in the United States. Absolute uproar. We'll get into that later on. But Alex, I mean, I want to get your thoughts on this because I know that you've had contact with Patrick Lancaster, who's been down in South America. He was trying to get into Venezuela to, record some amazing content like he does on the front lines of Ukraine. Have you had a chance to talk to Patrick? And also, Alex, I know you were in South America recently. You were in Argentina and I believe it was Chile for a few weeks. So kind of give us the vibe from South America and your thoughts on that. And let's start with the Venezuela conflict before we get into Greenland.
Yeah, being down in South America, you can get a real tone for United States. Argentina has totally turned MAGA. They are supporting the change down there, quite shockingly, because, it's my first time down to South America and first time to see an economy that's been absolutely obliterated. I mean, the currency changed anywhere between 3 to 6% trading when I was down there in Buenos Aires. Now, I asked the average person in Argentina what they thought about Venezuela's situation. Most of them supported it until the point where you gave them a reverse scenario and said, well, how about it that maybe this elected person of this country doesn't like your leader, and let's just say they flew in one Saturday night and took him, his wife, and his kids out. of the presidential palace and stuck someone else in there. And they said, well, no. Well, that's it. I mean, everybody is armchair critics. They can sit back and say, yeah, I think it was a good move. At the end of the day, I think it was one of the saddest days in the United States of America. And the more this guy continues to open his mouth and talk about, regime change in Cuba, I know we're going to cover Greenland later. It's very serious now. We can't block this out and think, he's just some old guy rambling on. He's going to do it. So speaking to Lancaster couldn't get into Venezuela. He was denied access in there. Angelo Giuliano made it into the country. We had a couple of personal conversations when we were down there. Some of the stuff he doesn't want to go on air and talk about. He said at a later time he will. He's now currently back in Hong Kong. But the situation down there in South America is, I think most of the people are just saying, you know what, our economies are wiped out. Okay, America, you're going to come in. You want to babysit us for the next little while? Okay, show us the money.
Well, and we have to remember, there's a reason why Argentina is very pro MAGA, is because they got a $40 billion bailout. So that show me the money. Money can buy a lot of influence and a lot of power. So I mean, and that's that. We're starting to see a lot of this in social media here in the United States, where where people are starting to really speak up against Trump and say, look, you promised us a more affordable healthcare. Our healthcare rates are going. You promised more affordable groceries. Beef is at an all-time high in the United States. You promised us all of these things. But we don't have, we have money to literally increase the defense budget now. Donald Trump shared this tweet, because of all the hostilities around the world, we need to increase our budget. Where's the hostilities to the United States of America? Venezuela poses absolutely zero threat to the United States. It's not going to militarily invade it. The entire, thing about drugs is completely fabricated because there's no fentanyl coming from Venezuela. That's what's killing Americans. The only thing that they really export would be cocaine, which is obviously not a great drug, but it's not going to killing in massive terms as far as fentanyl, and that's the drug crisis. So if you look at the data, there's just no correlation to Trump's claims that, they're narco terrorists and they're absolutely infiltrating our country with all of this stuff. I mean, all of these things are completely bogus. And Trump, the one thing that he's done is he's been at least very honest. He's from day one is like, it's all about the oil. We have an interest in Venezuela as it pertains to oil. And I think that's an interesting one, because usually when the United States does some type of military operation, at least the government tries to have some kind of moral justification for this, right? Whether true or not, usually we're always hearing the democracy and liberty, and we're doing it for the people. But at least Donald Trump has been very honest that he honestly doesn't give a crap about those people, and he really is just about getting that oil. But did you guys see that conference yesterday with the oil executives? Did you guys see that clip from there where they talked about where he goes, Chevron, how long have you guys been in Venezuela? And he's like, well, we were up here until 2019 and then we left. He's like, oh, why did you guys leave? He's like, well, we left because of the sanctions that were passed. So it's like, we left because of your sanctions. Your sanctions literally caused us to leave the country. And, Trump didn't realize that it was his sanctions that caused the oil executives that he's interviewing to leave. It's just kind of mind blowing here. Carl, let me know. Oh, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, just want to add to that, Carl, just one moment, just to add to Cyrus's conversation where he was talking about the oil executives. They did the math. Venezuela is not economically viable. It will cost over $80 a barrel to get that to market. I mean, oil's trading at 60. A person with a calculator and 10 seconds can figure it out. It doesn't work. The math doesn't work. So for all those dreamers out there that think that, we're going to take 300 billion barrels of oil and there's going to be palm trees and casinos in Caracas and everybody's going to make money, you've been sold one of the greatest lies I've seen in history, and that is there's nothing there for America. They removed a leader. Diplomatically, it's a goddamn nightmare, and I got a lot more to share. Go ahead, Carl. Sorry.
Exactly. I was just going to point out the amount of investment they will have to put into Venezuela to bring the oil production back to 3 million barrels. It's $186 billion over the time span of 16 years. That's like 16 years. That's like 4 U.S. presidency, right? I mean, no oil major executive is going to say, oh, let's put all this money in Venezuela because we will definitely reap the benefits 16 years down the road, because they honestly don't know what's going to happen once Trump is out of the office. It only makes sense if you can recoup your investment within 3 years. If the time horizon goes beyond 3 years, you're facing a lot of political uncertainty. And the one thing that business really hate is uncertainty. And it just does not make sense. Like Alex already pointed out, currently the oil price is actually at historical low level. And so the Venezuelan heavy crude requires a lot of processing, and it just does not make sense. And this is all in this is all like Trump's brain fart.
Oh, well, not only that, I mean, let's go back to the biggest story in 2025, which was, of course, the tariff war. And, this, Carl, you've hit the nail on the head, Alex as well, as far as, the investments that are going to go. Well, let's just kind of do some math on here, right? So you're saying it's $186 billion to rebuild that industry to a point where they could actually produce oil and start exporting. Okay, well, we know, for example, that when infrastructure is being built in America, those budgets never work. It's always over budget because the timeline increases, right? $186 billion today, you're not going to have that kind of money you're not going to secure that price for 16 years. The only way that you could do that would be if you're China, who can actually build, for example, the world's tallest bridge in the span of, what was it, like 8 or 9 months. So they were able to do a project. I believe it's somewhere between $300 to $400 million. They built the world's largest bridge. And it's absolutely, because of the logistics, because there's nobody that can build something like China. Okay, all right, bridge is going to cost us $400 million. It's going to get done within 8 or 9 months. And boom, there you have the bridge. It's done. Interesting case study. We can look at the bridge that collapsed in Baltimore last year. So that collapse, now you got to remember that bridge, was struck by a boat, it collapsed, but the foundation, right, the pillars on the bottom, they're drilled into the ocean floor. The foundation of the bridge is already there. So you basically just have to reconstruct the top of the bridge. Well, they said, all right, we're going to need, $1.2 billion to reconstruct that bridge. So it's like, wow, you're already like 3 times more than it would cost China to do. And then it's like, yeah, it's going to take us 6 years to do that. Actually, we're going to now forecast 8 years. And by the way, we're going to need more than $2 billion. So everyone's like, my gosh, like, how is this? That's how stuff gets built in the United States. We just know it's going to be, you're going to say 16 years. It's probably going to take 25. You're going to say 186 million. It's probably going to take 300 billion by the time it's done. That's just how it works. And so I think the other issue is we see, Carl, you brought up a good point where when you're a business owner and you're an executive and with the United States, you have this very big geopolitical instability because every 4 years, there's going to be a change in government. And you can see how wild things can change with someone like a Donald Trump in office. So again, it's the same thing when Donald Trump says, hey, Nike, we're going to tax you with these tariffs because you're building your shoes in Vietnam and China. We want you to start building shoe factories in America. Okay. So, I mean, if you're a Nike executive, if the 3 of us are on the executive board of Nike and we're having a meeting and we're thinking, all right, guys, what do we want to do? Do we want to invest a few $1 billion building multiple new factories in the United States? It's probably going to take us 12 months just to get the permitting in order to, find the locations, get the plans built, get the environmental, checklist done, get all of the steps needed to break ground is probably going to take us 12 to 18 months to do that. Then you're like, wait, do I really want to do this? Because as soon as Donald Trump's out, these tariffs are going away. This war is not going to happen. And so that's the same thing, like you said, Carl, is the instability. And this is the number one thing that business leaders want, right? And that's where we saw a lot of companies, they said last year, look, we can't give guidance for quarter 3, quarter 4. We can't give you an earnings preview because we don't know what's going to happen, right? Our tariffs could be 20%, they could be 70%, they could be 0. All of this affects the bottom line. So if you're forecasting how much money we're going to make in Q3, Q4, can't help you. We're just not going to forecast because of the instability from the government. Then, of course, the tariffs aren't working, and basically businesses, people don't spend, right? Because it's like, well, I don't want to invest a ton in America because it's instability. I don't want to invest here. Like, we're just going to have the status quo and let's just try to mitigate as much risk as we can. And so it's not productive for a business environment as well. And so I think that's, you guys nailed it on the head as far as Venezuela. I mean, Alex, you one of the things that you said, I think is really spot on is, these American people are sold this pipe dream. And that's what Trump does. I mean, that is his MO. He is a salesman. He is a marketer. I'll give him credit. He's probably the best marketer in the planet because, there's nobody that can BS and, just talk a bunch of nonsense, like Donald Trump, but in a captivating way that people think all of a sudden, I had a conversation with a really, really right-wing patriotic guy, former Marine Corps guy here in Las Vegas. And he's just like, man, it's never felt so cool to be American again. Like, we're just invading countries. We're kicking down bad guys. We're expanding our territory. Like, hell yeah. Like, we haven't expanded our territory in a few decades. Like I can't wait to get Greenland, man. Like, it's going to be sweet, and I'm just like, oh man, like this is just not good. People don't understand, but that's what I mean. Like, Trump's a marketer, and this guy is full, hook, line, and sinker. He's bought all the propaganda, and he just thinks, yeah, this is great. He doesn't understand the geopolitical consequence, and so, guys, let's get your opening comments on, Greenland. Alex, I want to get your analysis here on what you're thinking with the entire Greenland situation. As we played that opening clip, which, by the way, you helped me make, so I appreciate you're the master at editing and making these awesome clips. Thank you for that. But we've heard comments from Donald Trump. We're going to take Greenland, whether they like it or not. There's the easy way or the hard way. And so, what does the hard way mean? Are we talking military intervention? Are we talking a military conflict inside a NATO country?
Okay, this is how it's going to go down, but we're going to have to dial back just a little bit. So first of all, Mr. Trump, your opening statements that, we don't want Russia as a neighbor, 2.4 kilometers between Alaska and Russian territory. That's what you have. So, go back to school. Second one is, look, we have to understand what Trump has done here in the last year. Tariffs, those are going to come out. They're going to come out somewhere, and they're going to end up on personal balance sheets of people that are importing and exporting. Second of all, he's asked the Security and Exchange Commission to go to annual reporting rather than quarterly reporting. Okay. That is bad news for investors. All right. Number 2, Liberty Financial. The Trumps are in the crypto market big time. Look at who they are pardoning over the last 90 days. Some of the biggest criminals in money laundering on the globe ever. They make Bernie Madoff look like a school child. Okay. Shocking. So this is massive what the Trumps are doing. Okay. And connections with Binance, CZ buying, $2 billion worth of the currency. This is, guys, you have no idea what is going to happen to the financial markets. They are going to have Armageddon happen to it. So this is why Trump is deflecting and saying all these crazy, bizarre things, because his family's cashed out. Oh, no. Yeah. Oh, they cashed out. They couldn't give a damn about the US dollar. But what they want to do is, this is the master of creating an illusion right in front of you. Okay, let's rattle the world with Venezuela. It catches the headlines. Well, he pardons more people and gets them out of jail and prison for stealing billions of dollars from people. Next, and there's facts to this. I can read them to you. Next, let's do another illusion. Let's go in and let's take Greenland. Yeah, let's do that. Let's get everybody upset about it, and let's get Marco Rubio, his little pet dog, to go around and say, yeah, we want Cuba too. Yeah, Cuba, and you better be careful. But here's one thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that he will not go after a country that has a nuclear warhead. And it's clear. Greenland is wide open. Is Europe going to come to their rescue? I rather doubt it. It will consume the headlines while he structures his family to rake in billions of dollars through his, non-reporting issuers on NASDAQ and pull back regulations. This guy loves it. Oh yeah, let's just pull back to yearly reporting on financial markets that, run the U.S. economy. So yeah, I feel he's definitely going to go in. I think they are going to take Greenland by force. They probably won't need to. I have a really, bad feeling in my stomach when I even say that. It's absolutely awful. Can you imagine those people that have lived there for years? And I guess, hey, boats that go to countries 500 years ago don't mean anything. So, well, okay, well then just cancel, I don't know, Christopher Columbus Day. Why? Who cares, right? 1492 mean jack
Absolutely.
shit to this guy.
Yeah. Carl, let's get your thoughts, my friend, as we go to Greenland right now.
Yeah.
Carl, let me ask an opening question. I mean, do you think that we're going to see United States military invade a NATO country?
You know what? That's a distinct possibility right now, because that's what Trump is threatening to do. And first of all the reason he gave for grabbing Greenland is bogus, because they say, oh, we got to have Greenland because this very geostrategic, it sits in a very strategic position. We have to watch as the Arctic route opens up and the Chinese and Russian shipping going through the Arctic, and then we will be able to monitor that from Greenland and counter. First of all, U.S. already has access to Greenland. U.S. have military bases in Greenland. It has, because, U.S. is part of NATO, and it has all the basing right in Greenland. So you can already do that. And as Alex already pointed out, Trump says, I don't want to be neighbor with China and Russia. What do you think where do you think Alaska is, right? I mean, and so it's the whole reason why Trump is going to Greenland, because it's a big spectacle. It's good for television again, and it's good distraction, and also because he can. Trump is a big bully. He respects strength. If you push back, as China did during the trade war, he backs down and he said, "Oh, I have very good relationship with President Xi." But Europe, he does not respect Europeans, because European leaders, let's face it, have been bending over backwards for him. And even though they all despise him, but they have, when Trump says jump, they all say how high. And Trump does not respect weakness. He when he senses weakness, he pounds. And this is why he's going after Greenland, because he thinks this is consequence free. And he doesn't really care about NATO alliance, because he doesn't, like I said, he doesn't respect the Europeans. But this will have serious consequences. First of all, Greenland is part of a NATO country, and what happens when you invade a NATO country when you are part of a NATO country? It makes the whole, the Article 5 completely irrelevant. And then but right now it looks like Denmark, they don't really have like you said, Cyrus, Denmark doesn't have nuclear warheads. There's nothing really they can do to push back the U.S. military might, and other European leaders are not. I doubt they will put their necks on the line either, because if you see how their response to Venezuela, they all been saying, oh, okay, yeah, Maduro have to go. Donald Trump did a great job, but then they turn around and say Greenland is different. Greenland is a different case. Yeah. But in Donald Trump's mind, it's the same. It's the same. Both Venezuela and Greenland, it's what he thinks he can get away with. That's why he will do it.
Yeah, and I think there's one thing. It's very easy to pick on smaller countries. if you're the United States. Obviously, militarily attacking Venezuela, that's going to be an easy conquest for the United States. Obviously, if Donald Trump wants to overtake Greenland, I mean, quite frankly speaking, there really isn't anything Europe can do. Greenland doesn't have a military. Denmark doesn't have one. Even NATO. I mean, even if you're looking at amphibious assault, if you surround it with United States military ships, the only military ships in NATO are from the United States. So there's not really anything the Germans or the Danes or really anybody in Europe can do, unfortunately. And I think what's really interesting here is as we continue to talk about this Greenland one, is that I think there's an interesting proposition, because I've actually heard both sides. I've actually heard some people from Denmark and even from Greenland say, look, the chance to become American actually is an interesting one. Like, it could potentially be really good because America has more resources, it has more opportunities, and it basically, the United States has a lot more money than Denmark does to spend on Greenland. So it would be great if we could be part of the United States. Now, here's an interesting thing. I got some great stats for you guys. You're going to find this very interesting. So, what do you think the poverty risk rate is in somewhere like a Greenland right now? Under the Danish control, poverty, the risk to fall into poverty in Greenland. Any idea what that would be, guys? What do you guys?
Well, I mean, Greenland, they have 60% of their budget is provided by the Danish government. Their whole budget need to be subsidized. So if United States were to take over, guess what? It's not the U.S. will get all the wealth. It's U.S. have to put more money to subsidize the running of Greenland. But this is the part that Trump supporters don't understand. You have to pay for it. You are the ones that are going to pay for it.
Well, that's very true. And so what we realized here in the United States, though, is that if you are living in the continental U.S., right, and you are actually in the United States, it's good to be an American, right? The economy's fine, there's some good aspects to that. But if you are living in an American colony, the poverty rates are crazy. Here's the stats. In Greenland, poverty rate risk right now is between 5 to 10%. Let's call it 10%, okay? Well, in Guam, it's 23%. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, 25%. Puerto Rico, 43%. And America Samoa is 57%. So that is a really incredible stat right there, because it just shows you, again, like you see the same thing. Like, people are born in America Samoa, and it's like, great, you're American, you're part of, well, it's like, well, technically not, right? Like, I'm actually have a U.S. passport, but I can't vote because I'm in this colony. And actually, if you look at how the government runs our colony, it's garbage. Like, Puerto Rico is an absolute disaster. I mean, when you look at the poverty rates and the crime, and it's really, really sad. Now, if you look at the median income, let's go through this as well. So median income in America Samoa would be around $18,000. Puerto Rico, $24,000. Guam is $35,000. U.S. Virgin Islands is $37,000. Median income in Greenland right now, $50,000. So you start to look at the poverty rates, you look at the median income. There's a large argument that, again, we're kind of going back to the salesman, we're going to take Greenland, it's going to be great because we need it for the natural resources, and it's going to be great for the people of Greenland. Well, statistics show us very clear that in U.S. colonies, it's not great for the majority of people. And even in like Puerto Rico, where the wealth is that there's a tax law that actually exists for U.S. citizens. So, for example, if I wanted to establish residency in Puerto Rico, I could do that. And I think my maximum tax rate would be something like 2 to 3%. It's really, really low. So you actually have a lot of wealthy people going to Puerto Rico. For example, I think Logan Paul, very famous YouTuber that's a boxer. I mean, he's making hundreds of millions of dollars. He's actually established in Puerto Rico, lives full time on the island, specifically for that reason. That way he could. Yeah, Peter Schiff as well, great YouTuber, big finance guy. These guys, they live there for that reason. So that's the only thing that's going positive for Puerto Rico. But then again, you have to live in these massive compounds, armed security, and it's not real life. It's just you're taking advantage of a tax law and living in a paradise with armed security. So the statistics really don't show that it's going to be a good move for Greenland, and most importantly, the Greenland people. But I think ultimately it comes down to, I would say, look, if we are going to make a proposal, I think it has to come down to a referendum and a vote, for the Greenland people. But we've seen, the latest poll, which I think was in January, earlier in January, or maybe it was December last year, there's about 85% of Greenlanders do not want to actually move to the United States. They want to remain under Danish control. So again, there's this whole, propaganda that we hear in the United States where it's like everybody wants to be American, right? Look at all the immigrants from China. Look at the people always want to come to the United States. Everybody wants a U.S. passport. And I got to tell you an interesting thing, guys. This to kind of to rebuke that. This week in Las Vegas was CES, Consumer Electronics Show. I was down filming some content, visiting some brands. Big Chinese contingent here, and so many of them, it was their first time to the United States. And I just said, "Hey, first time to the U.S. What do you guys think?" And they're like, "Oh, it'll be our last time." Like, it's terrible. Or like and I'm not trying to rag on the U.S. Obviously, it's my home country, but it's just. I was like, that's really interesting. I wish we'd have done a vlog. It would have been kind of interesting to just vlog that and get their real reactions. But they're like, it's just, it's just too busy. It's just like, the food here's garbage. It's just like, you don't feel safe. I mean, like, they're like, China's at a point where it's just so convenient right now, right? If you know life in China, it's pretty damn convenient. It's safe. It's clean. It's China has leveled up in ways that a lot of people don't understand. And I think that's where a lot of people are like, man, like we're at CES and you get a little personal pizza, for lunch, it's $25 US. And they're just like, what is this? Like, how is this $25? And it just tastes like garbage. It's like $25 US in China. I mean, you're eating like a king, so just a little sidetrack there. But I mean, Alex, if we're going back to this, I mean, would you agree with this statement that, if the United States does militarily get involved and attacks Greenland, would this be the biggest gift to Vladimir Putin? Because I think essentially it would shatter NATO, which I guess would be the whole, reason for his war, right? I mean, he doesn't want Ukraine to join NATO. I guess if the United States joins, attacks Greenland, NATO collapses, then I guess Putin kind of wins because then Ukraine's definitely not joining NATO.
I think Greenland is something that, most of us kind of maybe joke about, and the people that voted last year saying, 85%, nah, we wouldn't join America. Listen, if these innocent people get invaded by the U.S. military, all hell's going to break loose here. We are on very thin ice with Iran right now. We're on very thin ice with Nigeria, all countries around the world, Greenland, Denmark, of course, you can add to it. There's, more fighting going on in Syria as we speak. We've seen what's happened in the Middle East. They go barging into Greenland. They start pushing people around. There's going to be some mistakes made, and they're going to have a goddamn redneck so far up their ass in America that they won't know how to deal with anything. There was this missile that was launched from Russia a few days ago, and pay attention to this, everyone, because this is a warhead that cannot be stopped by any country in the world. And that slammed into Kiev a few days ago. And we call it the silencer. When you unleash something like that, you are not just making a statement of retaliation for a prior bombing in Ukraine. You're saying to the world, watch, have a good look. You want to keep pressing, insulting our leader, thinking that you can bully your way with Russia. Maybe people will wake up and say, you know what? Thank God there's somebody that can push back against the United States of America. They may not win if both of them go to war. I think the whole world is finished. Yeah, but agreed. Greenland is not a territory that we should be celebrating, liberating as the next, colony of the United States of America. That's a goddamn threat to a country. And we may joke because we're not one of the 66,000 people that live there. But I'm going to tell you, as a Canadian, if the Americans start saying, yeah, you know what, let's take a shot at Canada. Why not? Oh, boy. You will see people become very patriotic very fast. And, when they start insulting China, it's interesting. They were giving numbers on Fox television the other day about how many people in China, in the military in China. You want to know how many people would defend this country? Every goddamn single citizen of this nation that I live in right now would defend its country tomorrow morning without any hesitation. So I think this whole chat about Greenland is just reckless, absolutely reckless.
Yeah, Alex, I appreciate your sobering analysis because you kind of really brought it to the point and brings the severity of what's really happening here. I mean, we can, it's a tough one because we have a president that has so clueless, and as Carl and we've made some jokes today, just talking about, hey, I don't want to be neighbors with Russia. Okay, well, you're 2.4 kilometers from Russia. I mean, it's just it sounds funny until you realize, again, this is the most powerful man in the world that has, that really, we're going to talk about this a little bit on the next topic, is just how he's consolidating power. Stephen Bannon has been very clear that they are going to make moves for 2028 to make sure that he stays in power. You have the ICE agents that are just running around causing domestic chaos in the United States. I mean, this is a very different America that we are looking at right now. And I think a lot of people are very worried about it. But I think, I had made an interesting video where I had actually, came up with a very alternate thought on this. I said, I think that the United States invading Venezuela is a gift to China. And a lot of people, are in the comment section kind of like, Cyrus, you're coping hard for China. You're trying to spin this for China. And I said, look, the Venezuelan oil is one thing, right? We know that China buys about 70 to 80% of Venezuela's oil. There's no doubt about it that for Venezuelans' economy, China is very, very important. Obviously, their biggest customer. But if you look at the data on the flip side, right, China, Venezuelan oil accounts for about 2 to 3% of China's oil. Very, very little. So, that's a minor hiccup. It's not going to, the whole propaganda coming out right now is that, oh, man, we have seized Venezuelan oil because it immediately shuts down China. How is China going to, turn on the lights in the country without Venezuelan oil? That was what Glenn Beck literally said, who is the founder of the Blaze, conservative media network. And so, you look at that and it's like, man, this is why you really have to understand geopolitics and why you have to look at data, right? And then we look at the data where, people, for example, we've got two pathways going down, right? We've got renewable energy and then doubling down on fossil fuels. We know Donald Trump is all about the fossil fuels and he's doubled down on that. And we know China is all about renewable energy, right? They added more solar power in the first half of 2025 than the rest of the world combined. And so, we look at the solar, the renewable, the hydroelectric. China's just broken ground on a brand new dam project through the Tibetan mountains. Very ambitious project. I don't think any other nation in the world could pull that one off except China. And it's going to generate more electricity than the United Kingdom combined, in 1 year, like the one dam project. So I do think that this is an advantage for China in the sense that, yes, there's going to be some little bit of chaos. I mean, you're still losing 2 to 3% of your oil. Obviously, China is very used to buying Venezuelan oil. So they're going to reroute. They're going to have to change things up. That's why they've been doubling down on renewable energy. But I think that we're approaching a time right now where there is a lot of people becoming very nationalistic, I guess, or patriotic would be the right word. Carl, what are your thoughts on if Donald Trump actually decides to pull the trigger and use the military in a NATO country?
Yeah, the NATO will collapse. The whole edifice of NATO. One country gets invaded, all will come pitch in. That will not work if the U.S. doing the invading, as you point out. U.S. it makes up the bulk of NATO, and that will be the end of the NATO project and end of the transatlantic. The whole European elite have bet their base their decision making process for the last 50 years. All that will just go up in smoke. And you brought a good point about the Venezuelan oil and how it will affect China. Yes, Venezuelan oil only makes up 4% of China's energy import, and oil is a fungible commodity. If China can't buy it from Venezuela, just buy it from elsewhere. And today, the oil prices sit at historical low levels. And China has been taking advantage of the low oil price over the past year to build up their strategic stockpile. Currently they have about 18 months of of what they need in their strategic oil supply. So China is not going to run out of oil anytime soon. And at the same time, as you pointed out, they have been steadily reducing their dependence on hydrocarbons. This is a whole point beside China's electrification project. This is why they're building high-speed rails all across the country, because all those high-speed rail are running on electricity, and electricity can be generated via other means, whether solar, wind, nuclear, coal, and every year China's import of hydrocarbon is steadily is not rising anymore. Now is holding steady, and in the future we can see that will possibly go down. So China is okay. I mean, China is obviously not happy, because China did have $60 billion investing in Venezuela, and out of which 12 billion haven't been paid back yet. But China do have options. And what it really shows to the other nations is how crazy United States is. This is why Canadian Prime Minister is going to China. With U.S. taking Greenland, you actually make Canada feel very uneasy, because if U.S. were to take Greenland, all of Canada will be boxed in from all sides by administration who have declared they want Canada to be next. Trump made that statement multiple times, and that will, I think it's a ramification of U.S. taking Greenland that will be more impactful, because Canada is U.S.'s largest trading partner right now. And right now they are actively trying to pivot away from that relationship, because they see how crazy Donald Trump has become. And this is why the Canadian Prime Minister is going to China, because they want to anchor the Sino-Canadian relationship right now, because so they can have more trade going to China, and China can easily replace the hydrocarbons from Venezuela from Canada. Canada is another oil producing country. And people have to remember, United States, the whole of Latin America, their economy is actually more complementary with China than with US, because US is an oil producer. US is an oil exporter. United States export oil. And what Latin America, a lot of the Latin America countries they're commodity producers, and China is one of the largest commodity consumer. And so this is why, by the nature of the complementary economy, this is why there are a lot of Chinese investment in those countries. And this is why Donald Trump is kind of fighting, he's fighting against a windmill, because United States is not offering alternatives. Instead of investment, all they can offer is military interventions, regime change, and bombings. I mean, people given the choice, they would still rather do business with China, which does not come with these, military threats.
Yeah, Carl and Alex, you both said something I want to touch on that's really important. First of all, Alex, you had mentioned, as a patriotic Canadian yourself, the attitude in Canada. And I got to be honest, I think many of you know that I lived in Vancouver for 5 years. I became a naturalized Canadian citizen. I hold 3 passports, actually. I'm a German citizen as well. So a very interesting perspective, because I'm part of the EU, obviously born in the United States, but also gained Canadian citizenship. So, and one of the things that really drives me nuts as a German citizen and as a Canadian citizen as well is that I think every country has to stand up for themselves and do what's in the best interest. Carl, you put out a great point, is that the European leaders for the last decade have been so weak in their leadership and essentially just been the lapdog of the United States. And that puts them in a weak position, because now when Donald Trump is actually saying, look, we're going to take Greenland and we're going to do it the nice way or the hard way. And are you going to rule out military force, Mr. President? No, we're not going to rule out military force. We could potentially use the military in Greenland as well, which could cause NATO to collapse, because like you had pointed out, it's the Article 5. How can you have one, if one NATO member is attacked, everyone needs to come to the rescue. But where's the article that says when a NATO member attacks itself? You know, I don't know if there's an article for that in NATO. So again, it just really compromises the entire organization. But, you know, again, we've seen this weak leadership, and this is something that's crazy. Carl, I'm glad that you pointed this out. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, is going to make an official visit to China next week to meet with Xi Jinping. He actually declared that with a specific goal, it is to reduce Canada's economic reliance on the United States. That's a profound statement because, like you had rightly pointed out, the United States and Canada, they have the best relationship. It's our 4,000-mile, border. We have been brothers. And it actually makes me really sad as a dual citizen of both countries, because when I lived in Vancouver, we had the beautiful Peace Arch, which is this beautiful arch that, between the two borders. And it just said, this is an arch to celebrate the friendship and the brothership of Canadians and Americans, let nothing ever come between our two countries, and it's a really beautiful monument there. I'm sure, Alex, I think you've probably been there, crossed that border crossing at some point in your life when you lived in Vancouver. But it's sad to see. And obviously we have tons of friends in Canada. And I agree with you. There is a country there of 40 million people that would immediately put on a, red and white shirt, with a maple leaf in the center and fight for their country. And that's what we've seen actually in Canada. I was actually in Canada. I don't think you've been back to Canada in a while, Alex. I was actually back for the New Year's holiday. I've spent about a week there with my family. And you see a difference in Canada where, Canadians aren't necessarily very patriotic. They're not going to be wearing a Canadian flag and proudly displaying that. But you'll see more houses have Canadian flags than ever before. More people are wearing Canadian stuff. And, there's definitely a movement where people are like, hey, we are proud to be Canadian. Yes, we can be neighbors. We can be friends. We still love American culture, right? Like we get American TV shows, we get American news, we love American football. The cultures are so close, but yet we are distinctly Canadian, and we're proud of that. And so I think that rubbish is just, that would never happen. I don't think that the United States has any chance to take Canada. It's just wild that this is what we're talking about, right? This is the stuff that we have to talk about in geopolitics, which is just very, very sad. But here goes down to the brainwashing again. Mark Carney announces his visit to China, and here's what somebody, we've seen in the editorial here. I'm going to bring this up. Somebody had published in the Toronto Sun, China is the real threat, not the USA. There's a lot of hysteria around Canada, but don't make no mistake, United States is our ally, and China is the real threat. This is from Lori Goldstein, who just published this editorial. China is the real threat, not the US. And I just think it's amazing, Alex, right? I mean, we look at, the actually, if we look at Stephen Harper, the former conservative prime minister, who actually had a very, very strong economy, for Canada, about 10, 15 years ago when he was in office. Actually, there was a point there, I think you probably remember, Alex, as an active investor, where the Canadian dollar had reached parity with the United States dollar. And, there was a tremendous amount of robust trade between, China and Canada, great relationship, economy was thriving. And so I think that there's a great opportunity for Canada to do that. We've also heard a potential news that Canada is thinking about dropping the EV tariffs on Chinese EVs, which, as we know, would absolutely change the entire landscape. And I've talked to many Canadians who have said that would be phenomenal. Give me that BYD car for what, 10,000 Canadian dollars? I can get a basic BYD car. Hell yeah. Cost of living is very expensive in Canada. If I could buy a brand new, Chinese BYD, we know what consumers are going to do. They want good products at the best prices. They don't care about geopolitics. They don't care about, oh, it's from China. Great. I have a lot of stuff from China. Love made in China. So I just think that there's a great opportunity here, for people to understand what's happening. And like I said, I mean, that meeting between Carney and Xi Jinping that's happening this week, that would have not happened if it was not for Donald Trump, the tariff war, the military threats, the decline of NATO, the geopolitical instability that we have seen here in 2026 to start the year. Alex, over to you, buddy. Let me know your thoughts.
Yeah, something that we didn't take into the calculations, and it hasn't come on
mute. I think you're on mute, buddy.
Me? Am I? I can hear.
No,
Carl?
I can hear Alex. I muted myself. Alex is fine.
Should I continue?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, okay. I'll keep talking, and then maybe Cyrus, let me know if you can hear me. So as I was saying, there's a calculation that I wanted to share, and that is of the oil market itself. We haven't seen tariffs come through on oil and gas equipment. We haven't seen inflation happen in the oil and gas market, but it's coming. The derivative market has been very clear that it's coming. We've seen it happen. Everyone's wondering, oh, why does the cost of beef cost so much in the United States? It's not the ranchers. It's the goddamn derivatives market in Chicago. These are all digitalized commodities. It's happening to the beef industry. It's happening to the soybean industry. It's happening to the oil industry. It's happening to the natural gas industry. Natural gas is going to go ballistic here in the next calendar year. It's the next target. Anybody watch silver lately? Up 140% in a year? Anybody see what that does? Silver's in everything. So yes, of course, Carney, is quite smart for what he's doing, heading over to China and saying, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, let's take a shot on this, guys. Let's bring the new energy vehicles over to Canada, which is a country that everybody has to drive. It's got over 8,000 kilometer highway, the number one highway in the country. It needs decent cars. And basically what I would see, and I'm going to project here, is that they will build some of these cars in Canada. Goodbye to the United States automotive industry. It's toast. It is toast. If America wants to drive garbage cars that are massively inflated for, $50, $60, $70, $80,000, it is the biggest scam on a person that you can imagine. Imagine how many cars that you bought in America that have lost value after you've driven it off the lot in the last maybe 30 or 40 years of your driving. Scam, 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 scam. But you buy a car here in China, it's affordable. Some of the ranges are amazing on some of these batteries, and it can happen overnight. I saw these cars in South America when I was there. New cars on the streets. People are like, outside there saying, I can't believe how great they are. I've heard nothing but positive things about the car industry. Now, Carney, his trip to China, very, very important. I think they will knock these tariffs down to zero. And as Carl and you said about the oil and gas industry in Canada, it's ripe for the picking. Send it to China. They'll buy it. Why would China want to buy all this fracking oil from, the Dakota states that are, cost $80 to $100 a barrel? That's garbage. No. Canadian oil all the way. I'm going to show my red and white. Go Canada, go Carney, and get a deal going.
Oh, I love it. I love a patriotic, fired up Alex reporter-fi. It's the best. But why you got to make me feel bad because I bought a car in the U.S., man? I got to get around, man. Why you got to make me feel bad? You said you get these guys that are buying cars are stupid. Lose the value. I mean, I got to drive, Alex. I mean, I got no other options, man. But I tell you, but I got an interesting side note. I don't know if you guys heard this story. So CES, okay, Consumer Electronics Show here in Las Vegas. Guess which brands showed up in full force? All the Chinese EVs were in attendance at CES. So you had Xiaomi cars, you had everything here. The interesting thing, they were able to drive up from Mexico. So all of them had Mexican plates. They crossed the border, drove right up. And guess who didn't show up? Ford said, we're not coming. GM said, we're not coming. So no American brands were there, but the Chinese EVs were there. What was the number one thing at CES? Everybody involved in the Chinese EVs. Everybody wanted to take a peek at what there are. And I mean, again, all of us have talked about this, but when you have the Ford CEO who went to Shanghai, said, man, I want to go drive this car, I think he bought a Xiaomi car, and had it flown back to Detroit. He's like, yeah, I personally drive it around Detroit now. It's just like, that's just, the game's over, right? I mean, if you've got the Ford CEO who's driving a Chinese EV in Detroit, Motor City.
Over. It's over.
So I'm gonna highlight that in an upcoming video that I filmed about CES. But basically, just talking about the fact that that was the major storyline, these Chinese EVs, and they were able to drive over that border. There's a good follow on Twitter, actually, Michael Dunn. He has like a Dunn Auto Insights. He's very, very big on the Chinese auto space. He's kind of like the #1 insider into Chinese auto, but he had shared a lot of really interesting tweets. So if you're interested in kind of learning more about Chinese EVs and certainly what was happening last week in Las Vegas, he had some really cool insights that will help you understand that. But guys, as we're kind of rounding out this live stream, I want to talk a little bit about I want to get your guys' opinion on what we're seeing in the United States as far as domestically. I think this is a really big story. And the thing is I think that we are looking at Donald Trump really trying to consolidate power. It goes back to what Carl said at the beginning, the Epstein files. This is a major, major problem for Donald Trump. I think he is desperate. I think he is trying everything he can to actually, block, distraction, the art of distraction, the art of trying to deflect, to basically make sure that people aren't paying attention to this. And we've actually seen this. We've seen Donald Trump say, if we don't win the midterms, I'm going to get impeached. They will find a reason to impeach me. I'm going to get impeached. Stephen Bannon said, look, if we don't win the midterms, I'm going to jail. There's just no way around it. I'm definitely going to go to jail. I think this is a very glaring red flag. I mean, if you are worried about losing the midterms because you will go to jail, well, then no doubt you've been doing some pretty bad stuff that probably justifies you going to jail. And yes, I think the same with Donald Trump. You've done some stuff that no doubt you damn well should be impeached for. And so I think what we're seeing here is we're seeing a very classic thing that we've seen in world history, where leaders are trying to consolidate power. He is trying to distract. And honestly, I don't see Trump any different than, any other dictator or any other world leader who wants to consolidate power. That's just the simple thing. But, Alex, I got to be honest with you, the images of these ICE agents, going into places like Walmart and Target, literally taking out United States citizens. And, there's a very big kind of anti-immigration. This is racial profiling. Who are they predominantly going after? Anybody that's brown skin, anybody that is essentially a Latino or a Latina. They're going after Spanish-speaking people. But, even Joe Rogan this week on the podcast, he's like, this is so bad for America, right? Like, if you've been here for 20 years in the United States, working here, paying taxes, okay, maybe you came over illegally, right? But as you know, you can come over illegally, you can establish residency, you can work, you can get a social security number. Yeah, maybe you're not a U.S. citizen. But for God's sakes, you've been here for 20 years, you're working here, you're contributing to society, your children are born in the United States, they're American citizens. I mean, I think it's just a very bad precedent. And Alex, I want to know your thoughts on the domestic chaos that we're seeing here in the United States with the ICE agents and what this really means with Trump consolidating power.
Sometimes when I do these live streams and talk with you, Cyrus, sometimes I think some of the topics we talk about are not real. They're almost fake, but this is real. And, here in China next week, I hear, many influencers are getting together to go and talk about healthcare in Shanghai for expats to help improve people's lives. Now we hear that America has decided, okay, why not? Let's spend a lot of money and let's round up a lot of people. Let's hope we get it right 100% of the time. If we get it wrong, I don't know, couple hundred Canadians are being detained by ICE agents in the U.S. You must remember that a lot of these facilities are publicly traded companies on the New York Stock Exchange that make money when people are detained or make money when people go to jail on very long charges. They have the influence to lobby for extended penalties for people that break the law because it is a financial gain for these companies and the governments. So rounding up people, shooting people, because what? They maybe are there illegally or not there or don't have their paperwork. since when did we start calculating what immigration is? Okay, if I go back, I'm pretty damn sure whether it's my great grandfather came over, probably maybe with papers, maybe without papers. Isn't everybody pretty much an immigrant in the United States and Canada, besides the people that originally found the land? Aren't we? Isn't, my grandparents are from Wales. I don't know if my great grandfather or the great great grandfather or the grandfather has proper documentation.
Right.
Now we live in a world that everybody's monitored. And so, I mean, where are we going to start with this? Are we going to be injected with a code that they will scan us and say, yeah, he's here legally. Yeah, move him along the line. Is it, are we profiling people on the color of their skin? It's disgusting. It really is disgusting. And people, we may think that we're doing the best for, yeah, I understand. Get the bad guys out. I get that. But boy, oh boy, does anybody really understand the trauma that people are going through? Innocent people that are going through? Where's this is collateral damage, if you ask me.
Oh, I mean, it's shocking. I think it's absolutely shocking. Carl, let me know your thoughts. What do you think about when you're looking back at the United States and seeing what's happening on the Bali?
I'm glad I'm in Bali. Well, I mean, it's a collateral damage is they're shooting white women now. I mean, it's no secret that a huge contingent of the MAGA crowd is those white supremacists, right? They want the brown people out, and they're the ones who've been crying about white genocide and there's not enough white children. And here they are. They're defending the ICE agent shooting a white woman with white children. I mean, these guys don't really care about what they say. They don't really care about white genocide, all that stuff that they say they care about. What they're doing is they're channeling. They see the ICE agent as a proxy of themselves. People with power, because they realize subconsciously that they don't really have power in their lives. That they also probably also subconsciously aware that U.S. is not going in the right direction, right? The society is degrading. So instead, what they do, they're having power trips. Think they're living precariously through Trump and through ICE agents. They think like they identify themselves with those people in power, and this is why we're seeing these like kind of cult like behaviors of the hardcore MAGA. These people can be reasoned with because they see, okay, finally we are taking revenge on the society that have failed me, because I am not achieving personal success in this society. So I am channeling through the ICE agents brutalizing other people that I feel like, okay, I still have control. But this is this has to be said. That even these people are now a extreme fringe minority in the American society. This is why I don't think even half of America now is standing behind Trump, because he's realizing that because of the Epstein files, and people saw that he was Israel first, and now this is why he's doing all these cranking up everything, including domestic program like ICE deportations and military adventurism abroad in Venezuela or Greenland. For him, he had to keep up this constant distraction, so he can remain in power. And I don't think this is sustainable.
Yeah.
How much right now he's already cranking up everything to 11. I mean, where do you go from here?
Well, and I'm going to add a little interesting perspective here for everybody, because I'm very passionate about immigrants in the country, because my mother is an immigrant. My mother is from Germany, and interesting enough, she came to the United States at age 20. My mother's now 82. So she's been living in the United States for 62 years. Interesting enough, she is not a U.S. citizen. She has retained her German passport. She's always been passionate about being European and being German. Obviously, she has permanent resident status in the United States for many, many decades. But, it makes you wonder. It's just like, now, I don't think she's going to be targeted because, one, she's retired and she's in her 80s. Number two, she's white. So I don't think the ICE agents are going to go after her. But now we flip it over to my wife, who is Canadian via China. She was born in China, holds a Canadian passport, obviously not white. And so you start to, every time we cross the border back into the United States, I always kind of wonder, is it okay to enter in with the green card, which she, has? I mean, she has, we have 3 children together, all of whom are Canadian and United States dual citizens. So obviously, she's helped produce 3 United States citizens. It was a very easy pathway for her to become a green card holder. But it's always in the back of my mind a little bit. When you're seeing these illegal takedowns. And the problem is I don't know if you guys saw that clip. This is what's really scary, and I want people to understand this. You have JD Vance, which I think it's remarkable that how well he is at lying and distorting the truth. And the problem is he's like a snake, because it just comes off so natural and so easy, and just like, I cannot believe you guys would be, siding on the side of the woman. And, this ICE agent's life was in jeopardy. He had to defend himself. And the problem is, we've seen the video evidence. The video evidence is clear as day. And, we've seen a lot of videos from, for example, I've been, retired military officers, retired Army and police chiefs who said, look, I was a police training officer for 25 years. The number one rule is that you cannot fire a weapon at somebody because they're fleeing away, right? Even if it's a criminal, right? This is why you see cops are running after criminals, because you can't, if a guy runs away, you can't just draw a gun and shoot him in the back. It's illegal. That's the number one rule. So this is the, this is the protocol, and this is the problem when you have these ICE agents that have been given full immunity, by the way. JD Vance said, look, they have full immunity from the law. They are not going to face anything. That is the damn scariest thing I've ever heard in my life, because how can you have agents that are, just of a made up agency that Donald Trump created? Now they're patrolling the streets with masks on, heavy, machine guns and, military weapons. And it's just like, these guys can do whatever they want. Again, you have people that have too much power. And I don't know if you guys saw that video clip from there was a video clip from the point of view where the white woman is in the car and she said something like, I don't care, man. Like, you do you. Like, I don't care. Like, whatever. And so, she drives off. The guy shoots her 3 times, and then he says, fucking bitch. Right? Like, this guy literally shoots her in the face, and that was his 2 words. So you kind of contrast that, right? Like, even if you want to have a debate on, was the officer in a position that he had to defend himself? What was there a dangerous situation? Was he justified in actually taking out that U.S. citizen? And then all of a sudden you look at the exchange, and her response is, I don't care, man. Like, you do whatever. Like, I'm just going to get on with my day. And then after he shot her, in the face, that's the 2 words that he muttered. So look at just by that interaction there, you can tell who is right, who is wrong, what's happening inside this country. And I think that, again, this is why my thesis is that China is in a much stronger position, because when we go back to China every summer, we go back for 3 months every summer with the family. And it's just, it's a breath of fresh air, because it's like you have a society that is united. You have a society that is, moving together in the same page. And I'm not trying to say that China doesn't have its economic problems. We know that the Chinese economy is not the same as it was back in 2007, 2008, when I first went there, and it's growing by 14% a year. Everything's booming. Everybody's, loving it. There's challenges. But I would say that the United States economy is having extreme challenges as well. And there's a lot of people that are very frustrated. And I think that's where, we're seeing a lot of frustration with the American people, where it's like, how is attacking Greenland in my best interest? How is starting a war in Venezuela in my best interest? And, I'm very happy that we can come on a stream together, and chat about this, guys, because we need more people to understand what's going on. We need more dialogue, and we need more voices that are going to passionately talk about the reality of what's happening. But I am much more worried about the United States in the short and long term, rather than I am with China. China is going to be able to figure their stuff out. they're a much more peaceful society, a much more united society. Whereas we know the craziest risk in the world right now is the United States government, because it has been, it is under rule from a guy that does not want to give up power, who has said that he will come out and, we have channels for running for 2028. No, you don't. The Constitution says very clearly you have no channels. There is no thing unless there's a referendum of the Constitution. That's the only way that would happen. And by the way, I think you need like 68, over 67% approval. You need 2/3 approval, which is damn well not going to happen. So I don't know. Guys, let's wrap it up. We've been on here for an hour and 20 minutes. I really appreciate you guys. I love being with you guys. You guys are amazing insiders. We'll start with Alex. Give us your final thoughts as we close this amazing session out.
It's going to be a financial thought. And guys, I mean, watch the commodities on the market here in the next 2 months. Watch the natural gas prices. See who else Trump pardons. He's let Binance founder out of prison. He's let the BitMEX co-founders. They've been pardoned. He's let Silk Road guy, which I have a little bit of sympathy for, but he's pardoned. Trevor Milton, he's been pardoned. So, I mean, this guy's ramping it up, and this is going to play out in the financial markets. And the day of reckoning is going to come. And as I've said on the show many times, the derivatives market is almost a quadrillion dollar market. And you wonder why your price of beef is going up. It's not because of those ranchers want more cash. In fact, they're losing on their herds. It's the financial markets that are taking your money and manipulating it. And boy, oh boy, I hope they don't pull the trigger on Greenland. If they do, Europe's not going to come to the rescue. Maybe an Resnik missile will. And that's all I can say for today. Cyrus, what an exciting time to come on here and have a live stream with you. We got to do this a lot more, my friend.
Yeah, I think I love being with you guys. I think I'm really trying to commit in 2026 to trying to do a live stream at least once a week. I'd like to get in kind of back in a rhythm here and kind of build this up. Alex, I mean, our YouTube journey started exactly 5 years ago when we were locked down in COVID, and you reached out to me. We had a really fun run with the Let's Talk China show. I mean, that was I remember when I was invited by you to your show, I had something like 2,000 subscribers. I mean, it was very early.
We're almost at 1 million now, my friend.
We're getting close. We're going to keep pressing forward to that goal. But, Carl, I love having you on here as well. You always bring a great perspective, my friend. And I'm really looking forward to having more live streams with you as well. Carl, let me get your final thoughts as we close this one out.
Yeah, what you said about worry about your wife, that actually strikes home for me because my wife is Indonesian. So I last time I traveled to United States to see my parents was in 2023, and my mom hasn't seen my youngest son yet, and now I don't plan to go visit United States in the next 3 years because if they do something to me, I can sue their ass off. I can sue the government for millions of dollars, but they can easily just go after my wife. Then they can deport her, and then there's no recourse. So I'm gonna wait out Trump. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait after 3 years to delay my family visit back to United States because I don't want to deal with that right now. But
that's sad. I mean, that's a really sad thing when you have people making those calculations. And I mean, many of you know that I'm here in the United States because my parents are getting old and we need to help with them, and I want to be closer to them so they can see the grandkids. But same thing. I mean, like when we go back to China for 3 months, I'm always worried about when we cross immigration, and if they look at my wife, who's obviously says born in China. Oh, you were gone for 2 months. Where were you at? You were in China. What were you doing? You always have those things in your mind, so it's a very real threat. I think you're right on, Carl.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to do more live stream with you guys. So, it's always a pleasure.
Fantastic, Carl. Thank you so much. Well, everybody, I'm going to end it just saying, let's keep our eyes and ears open, for the future on what's going to happen. We know that I do think that 2026 is going to be probably one of the most unstable, just completely crazy years in the world of geopolitics. We do have Donald Trump that is really proving to be a very wild and chaotic leader who is going to take substantial risks that really could potentially compromise our entire international, rules-based order. I mean, we do have to admit that this rules-based order, has kept us away from a world war since World War II. It's been the system that has allowed us peace and prosperity around the world for the last 80 years. I would say, though, that the United States has been routinely, destroying that, though. I mean, we look at the situation in Gaza. I mean, we brought up the situation where Israel really controls the purse strings, really controls the United States government. And so when you allow things like a genocide to happen, you actually actively fund a genocide, and you don't really give a damn about these people. And then you're starting to infiltrate into other countries. I mean, there's no secret that after World War II, the United States has led over 50 regime change operations. And by far, the vast majority of them, the people are worse off than than what's happened before. And I think that's a very interesting one. I did a live stream last week with a man from Venezuela, and he was very quick to point out. He said, "Look, a lot of people are thinking, hey, we got rid of Maduro. This is awesome for the world. It's awesome for the people of Venezuela." Nothing changed in Venezuela. The Maduro regime is still in power. His vice president immediately sworn in. Literally, there is not a single thing that has changed for the Venezuelan people other than the fact that they've gotten rid of Maduro and just replaced him with his vice president. So this whole idea that, oh, wow, this is such a great win for the Venezuelan people. Not really. Basically, nothing has changed at all. And so the only thing is, and what you're going to see is, we know damn well, we've made this very clear, that the United States is only after the oil. They only want a financial transaction. It's not about liberty. It's not about democracy. We don't care about the Venezuelan people. We're in the money business. And that's why I like bringing Alex in, because you always bring in the markets, the derivatives. I mean, Alex, you and I have been talking about precious metals over the last year, frequently. And there's a reason why gold's up 165%. I've had some people in the chat saying, look, I've been making a killer on silver. Yeah, look at what's happened in the silver market. All of this goes back to geopolitics, but we're going to end it there. I'm going to play our closing video here with some nice skylines of Shanghai, again, courtesy of Alex, who made this. So guys, we'll do more live streams, more chats. Thank you, everybody, for an amazing show. Thanks for being here. I think we were up to about 1,900 people here on the stream tonight. So thank you all for giving us your time. And I look forward to seeing you all, including Alex and Carl, in a future live stream to you guys. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.